This story is a work of fiction inspired by compassion, fate, and redemption, and any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. The night the rancher sat at the poker table, dust on his boots and loneliness in his eyes, he believed he was gambling for coins and pride. Never imagining a human life would be pushed toward him as a cruel joke disguised as a win. Before you settle into this story, let me ask you something from the heart. Where in the world are you watching from? And do you believe a single choice can change two lives forever? That quiet question matters. Because what happened next on that broken ranch would echo far beyond cards and chips. They called her worthless, a frightened girl treated like property. Her language strange to him and her eyes lowered in shame. When the men laughed and shoved the deed across the table, the rancher stood up, anger tightening his jaw. He didn't cheer or boast. He paid the debt, cut the paper in half, and told her she was free to leave at sunrise if she wished. She stayed not from fear, but from nowhere else to go. He gave her his spare room, warm food, and a blanket mended with care. Days passed in awkward silence, then gentle routines. He showed her the horses, the fields, and how the land healed those who listened. She taught him patience with smiles and small acts of gratitude, pointing at objects and repeating words until laughter replaced tension. The rancher had lost his family years ago, grief turning him rough and quiet. Nights were hardest, when memories crept like cold wind through empty rooms. She carried her own scars, sold by desperation and cruelty she barely understood. Haunted by faces and voices she tried to forget, slowly, they found comfort without promises. Sharing meals, shared work, and the quiet dignity of survival. He learned her name, Nay, and she learned his, Daniel, speaking it softly as if testing hope. She watched him mend fences with stubborn care, and he watched her tend a small garden, coaxing life from stubborn soil. Trust grew not from grand gestures, but from consistency, from knowing tomorrow would be gentle too. When townsfolk mocked him for keeping her, he defended her without raising his voice. He bought her dresses, not as ownership, but dignity, letting her choose colors that made her smile. He learned her food, her stories, and the way she watched sunsets like prayers answered. She laughed for the first time one evening, clear and surprised. And Daniel realized he hadn't heard laughter on his land in years. Take a moment here, because if kindness is speaking to you right now, stay with it. Stories like this ask us to pause and decide who we choose to be when no one is forcing us, when doing right costs something real. Trouble came when men returned, claiming ownership and threats. Daniel stood firm, law papers ready, reputation on the line, hands steady despite fear. May stepped forward, stronger now, declaring she was no one's prize, her voice shaking but unbroken. The sheriff believed them, and the men left with curses instead of claims. Their power dissolved by truth. Winter tested them harder than words could explain. Illness struck. Storms raged, and Daniel nearly lost everything he had rebuilt. May nursed him night after night, whispering courage in broken words that meant more than perfect speech. When he healed, he wept, understanding love had quietly grown without permission or debt. Spring brought renewal. May chose to stay, not because she had to, but because she wanted to build a life. Daniel asked her to walk beside him, equal and respected, promising partnership instead of protection. They married simply, witnessed by open skies and honest smiles, not as a rescue, but as a shared future. They worked side by side for years, facing droughts, doubts, whispered judgments, and long nights of uncertainty. Yet each challenge only strengthened their bond and deepened their respect. What once began in cruelty transformed into a testament of choice, reminding everyone nearby that humanity is measured by how we treat the powerless, especially when no reward is promised and no one is watching our choices closely. Because character is revealed in silence, patience, and everyday decisions made with care. Years later, travelers spoke of a ranch where a so-called worthless girl was treated like a queen, and a lonely man found redemption through mercy, patience, and choice, remembered in quiet conversations and passing smiles. If this story touched you, share it with someone who believes kindness matters. And subscribe for more stories like this. The moral is simple. Dignity given freely returns as love, and compassion can transform fate itself forever.